this evening. Niels is a veteran BCS speaker, spoken for the BCS on a number of occasions. He's always a very popular speaker. And Niels is an independent product development coach and an expert in optimizing performance. Has long experience with Philips and in leading an electronic systems design company. Has since 2001 taught and coached over 400 projects in more than 40 organisations and in many countries around the world. So Niels has a wealth of experience to draw on and to share with us. So I'll hand over to Niels now.
There we are. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to listen. And I like to talk about my hobby, how to deliver the right stuff at the right time. So I was speaking at the quality webinars, but some quality people complain that it's more project management. So that's why some people decided maybe it's also good to have it here with project managers. So as already said, independent engineering and project coach. I call it quality on time coach. Sometimes I call it flying QA person, but the thing is focused on delivering the right result at the right time. Isn't that what projects are about? Helping projects to be more effective, more efficient, more predictable. And I hope some of you are interested in that. And because most projects think they can do everything themselves, other people think projects are always late, so who cares? So, and some people even have it as a strategy to have project late because then they get more income. But some people, when it's really a difficult thing to deliver on time, I call it project rescue. Now, if we have only a few days before the deadline, there's not much we can do. But if there's a few weeks before the deadline, usually we still can deliver on time. So that's project rescue. Sometimes, because by birth I'm an electronics engineer, sometimes I still like to develop some hardware and firmware electronics product if a client asks me to do that. Project types for coaching, well, mostly it's human behavior and project management. So whether it's electronic products, firmware, software, space, road, rail, telecom, industrial control, parking system, I'll talk about that. The project types are numerous. And every time we're working with people, so actually the problems are very similar. So what's the importance of time? Of course, we need some return on investment because we are investing in a project and we should have some benefit from it. Otherwise, there's no money to pay the salaries, right? So some people think the return on investment is the benefit of doing the project, having done the project, minus the cost of spending for the project. But I think it's even a little bit more complicated because every day we are later, we miss the income, the benefit of the project for that day. Yeah, so the cost of being late is a lost benefit. And the cost of not starting yet, because once the idea is there, people think, well, we can start later, maybe 3 months later, we start the project. Well, every day we start the project later, we finish the project a day later, depriving us from the benefit. So the only reason to delay the project, some reasons. One reason is we don't expect the benefit. Well, don't do the project. And the other reason why we don't start this project yet, because we're working on a project that gives better benefit. Simple. But in order to know whether it's useful to run the project and start now is the business case. Why are we doing the project? So I always ask, also if I start in a new team, what's the cost of 1 day of delay? Now, some people say, well, things take time. So how about delay? Well, then I have to add that little word, unnecessary delay. What's the cost of 1 day of unnecessary delay? Anybody in the audience who knows the cost of 1 day of unnecessary delay of your project? Do you know? So usually if I ask that to a project team, they don't know. They look at me, huh? Then I ask, what's the cost of your project per day? Usually they don't know. Then I ask, what's the cost of you per day? And that's not what you get, it's what you cost. Because you also have to have income for the boss, and for the villa of the boss, and for the car of the boss. Yeah. So what is your cost per day? Usually they don't know. Some people even say, my manager doesn't want us to tell. Well, that manager maybe needs some education. So then if you don't know the benefit, because that's part of the return on investment, yeah, let's assume the benefit of the project is 10 times the cost of the project. 10 times? Well, not every project is successful. Yeah, let's be honest. Yeah, so our project should have at least 10 times the cost as a benefit. So if you don't know these things, how can you make decisions in your project? So I was working with a team, sitting in the conference room, and asked this question: what's the cost of unnecessary delay? Don't know. What's the cost of your project? Don't know. What's your cost per day? I don't know. And at that moment, I saw through the little window of the conference room door, I saw the boss just passing by. I opened the door. I said, boss, they don't know what they cost per day. The boss said, I also don't know, but I'll find out. So, and some time later, he came back. He said, 400 euro. Let's call it 400 pounds. It was in Ireland, so it was 400 euro, but that's about the same, isn't it? So 400 per day. Okay, now we can calculate. Of course, mathematics is difficult for some people, but 5 times 400 is 2,000, times 10, 20,000. Simple calculation, right? Now some people say, yeah, but that 10. I said, well, do you have better statistics? Do you have a better number? I mean, the exact number is not important. The number is big enough because the team immediately starts making different decisions. And if they don't like the 10, let's make it 5. It's still a lot of money for that day, right? So, do you, all of the audience, do you have an idea about what the cost is of your 1 day of unnecessary delay? I was at a telecom company and they were starting with voice over IP because the competition was starting with voice over IP. So they quickly had to introduce that to their customers to take a piece of the cake of voice over IP. So I was standing in the room with a product owner of some project, and he left for I don't know why, to talk to somebody. And then the other guy sitting in the room said, Niels, now you're waiting here. I have a problem with my project. He said, I have this project and 2 people have studied 1 month to plan the project and estimate how much time we should spend to get the project running. That's about 1 month, 2 people. In that case, it was 500 a day, 20K spent. Okay. Then he said they estimated they needed 10 months and times 4 people times 500 is 400K to do the project. Okay. But they said we can save 4 months by investing 200K. And then the business said, well, 4 months is not 200K, it's 160K. So 200K investment is more than the cost of people working those 4 months. So we are not going to invest. And the project owner said, well, something is not correct here. Actually, those 3 people said, let us spend another 2 weeks to do more research on the benefit to convince the business. Well, 2 more weeks, that's only 10K, that's not that much. Well, it's much, but yeah. But this product owner said to the team, you must start working, because every day we start later. We introduce our VoIP later. So he asks, something is not right. I want them to invest that 200K, but the business doesn't want to do it. So I said, okay, what's the expected revenue when everything is done? He said, 16 million a year is what we expect as a benefit. Oh, interesting. Those telecom companies rip us off. They get 60 million per year once this is running. Okay, so 2 weeks extra doesn't cost 10K. It costs 620K. Yeah, and saving 4 months, it doesn't save 160K, it gives 5 million extra income. So you can imagine the guy ran to the business, invest those 200K, I don't know what for it was, that was not my problem, yeah, invest it and starts this project. Yeah, so these are such simple calculations, but who is doing them? I hope you do. Time is usually more important than the budget. I was in Japan, sitting on the kitchen table of an R&D director of a semiconductor company. He happens to be my cousin or something like that, because my wife is Japanese. So we were sitting there and he said, Niels, I hear you help projects to be successful, so can you explain what you do? I said, well, can you say what is a typical project? Let's take some typical project of your R&D people. He said, well, we have 4-week projects. I said, okay, 4 weeks. I like to put these lines, line, tuck, 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 tuck. So this is what we expect? Yes, he said. Okay, and then after 1 week, how much do these people usually succeed in doing after 1 week? He said, well, about 10%. Oh, interesting, I said. And what do you tell them then? Because you expected 25%, but they produced about 20% of the result. I tell them to work harder. Oh, well, in Japan, the boss is always right. So I said, well, if they must work harder, how much harder? He said, oh, I said, well, that's easy. Again, mathematics seems so simple, but it seems so difficult. 30, they have to work 3 times as hard in the coming weeks. And the next week, they produce another 10%. So they still have to work 4 times harder in the 2 other weeks. And in the last week, they have to work 7 times as hard. So I said, well, how long do these projects usually take? He said, well, 8 or 10 weeks. I said, I could have told you. Yeah. So easy mathematics not being used, optimistic, and then not understanding why we are spending so much time. So one of the processes I'm talking about today is timeline. And timeline is about how do we know that we do and get what is needed when it is needed. Of course, some people think about Microsoft Project, but Microsoft Project is typically a tool where people work for the tool. And I say never work for the tool because the tool doesn't pay your salary. But that's another story. So standard projects usually say, okay, this is now, then everything is done. And in between we have to do the things with the people we have. We add a little bit of contingency and that's the time we need for the project, right? Recognize that, but then you recognize maybe something else. That usually there is an earlier deadline, right? So what do agile projects do? Agile people say deadlines. We don't have deadlines. We're doing our best and we deliver working software. Well, okay, if that's what your customer wants, be my guest. But in my approach, yeah, we go, what is the deadline? And what surely will be done? What surely will not be done? And what may be done because estimation is not exact science. And let what surely will be done be the most important things. And usually the customer couldn't care less about the bells and whistles, if they were important at all. So it's better to have 80%, 100% done than 100%, 80% done. And let it be the most important 80%. And if you see that what surely will be done never is enough to make the customer happy, you better kill the project now instead of after 3 times the budget. So just to focus on what we have to deliver, yeah, what is the top level requirement of what we do? What's the goal of what we do for a salary? And this is my definition. If you can help me to make it better, please. Delivering the right result at the right time, wasting as little time as possible. Is that acceptable? And to make it even shorter, I call it delivering quality on time, the right stuff at the right time. A little bit more elaborate is providing the customer with what they need, what is usually not what they say, at the time they need it, which can be earlier and later than they say, to be satisfied, because then they may want to pay, and to be more successful than before. Because if they're not more successful with what we deliver, why would they pay? But customer is king, but we are not slaves, so it must be win-win. So what the customer can afford, because usually what the customer wants they can't afford. I want to have a Rolls Royce. Well, you want to go from A to B. Yes, I want to go from A to B. Also, if that costs you 300,000, how about the Volkswagen? So what we mutually, beneficially and satisfactorily can deliver in a reasonable period of time. How about this as the top level requirement of whatever we do? At the time they need it. So we can't change history. Whatever we did, good or bad, we can't change anymore. It's there. We only can hope to improve the future. So we have the value still to earn between now and the deadline. Also use the word fatal date. Value still to earn in the time still available. So if the needed time is much less than the available time, we may just go off. If the needed time is about the same as the available time, we are probably in trouble because usually things take a little bit longer, right? And if the needed time is more than available time, we are in trouble already, clearly. And the first time I made this picture, it looked like this. But then I realized if the match is over, you can't score a goal. So I changed the picture to this picture. So now, if we see a picture like that, we already know we will be in trouble. failure is not an option. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? Even more important is starting deadlines. Because if you focus on the final deadline, you will go over it. Yeah. So it's better to focus on the starting deadline, because the starting deadline starts with the last day we can start the deliver by the delivery deadline. So the minimum time to finish the job. Every day we start later, we now already know we will end later. So we focus on starting deadlines, and hopefully in front of there, between now and the starting deadlines, there is still time to move these bars, because we can't do everything at the same time. Focus on starting deadlines, because if you focus on the final deadline, you will go over it, and that's not on time. This is a picture. It is not so clear to see, but it was a real whiteboard, and this was finishing deadline to show for a parking system the machine where you do your payments, the payments machine. So there was some line going with electronics. Where's my cursor? There's my cursor. Electronics, some mechanics of the box, some mechanics on the front panel. They even designed a new coin changer. They made a whole new system because their old parking systems were kind of spaghetti and a little bit old-fashioned. So the whole system was going to be made new. So what did we do? We took the intermediate deadline and we looked back weeks, and we designed the order of doing things. Because sometimes somebody had to work at one line and then the other line, and if they would be in the same week, that would not be possible. So we have to design to make sure that everything is done by the end. Now, we had this on the whiteboard with the mechanical project manager, and he said, I have to put this in the computer. I said, why? Yeah, because I have to show it at management at the top floor. I said, well, can't you show this? No, it must be nice in some PowerPoint. So the next week I visited again, picture was still there, and he was again saying, I must put this in my computer, in a PowerPoint. I said, if you call the managers, take the telephone, call them. I put 4 chairs in front of the whiteboard. And I said, you call them and we'll explain. 5 minutes later, 4 managers were sitting in front of this whiteboard. And I let the project manager explain. And after a few minutes, the manager said, oh, it seems you are in control. Keep up the good work. And they left. I said, you see? Would you have wasted a lot of time to make a nice picture of this? You could make a photo. Actually, that's the reason why some time ago I bought the camera. Well, a long time ago I bought the camera before there were smartphones. Just to make pictures of whiteboards. Not to waste time in putting it in more nice pictures. So, how can we be on time? Question to the audience. Are your deliveries usually on time? Who dares to say you are always on time? And some people say, yeah, but management pushes us to be on time. We have to deliver, then quality is compromised. Well, that's very strange, because quality doesn't have to be compromised for being on time. So let's have a look at that. Yeah, if the quality is compromised, it's not on time, because what we deliver should simply work. Now, if we need feedback from some stakeholders whether what we did was actually what they needed, yeah, we can discuss what, yeah, often customer says exactly as I said, but not what I need. Okay, now we are talking. But if it's full of bugs, yeah, then the stakeholders can't even discuss, because it simply doesn't work. Therefore, what we deliver simply works. One of my many mantras. So how can we save time without compromising quality? And I collected 7 options, and I will show you my options. The first four options are the deceptive options. Intuitively very strong, every project uses them, but they don't work. On the contrary, they make it worse. First so-called option, hoping for the best. We see we don't have enough time, but we hope it still goes on time. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. We have to go for it. Yeah, therefore, let's do our best. Well, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. Anybody of you working overtime? Working overtime is fooling yourself and your boss. Because normal time already makes you tired in a certain level. Normal people make a certain amount of errors. But if you get more tired by working overtime, you make relatively more errors. And in the end, you only work overtime to repair the errors, hopefully, that you created by working overtime. Therefore, never, ever work overtime. So that, paradox, once or twice a year, you have the energy to do it when it's really necessary. The fourth option, moving the deadline. Now, you may have heard about Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law, people spend the time available. Yeah? So if you have more time available, you spend more time. Doesn't mean you do more. And the student syndrome is the same medal at the other side. Yeah, you start as late as possible, only when the pressure of the fatal date is felt. Yeah, usually the guys start working for the exam the evening before. The girls usually start a little bit earlier, but you need the pressure of the fatal date. Now, I showed you starting deadlines are more important. So, and moving the deadline is the only way you may move your deadline is towards you. Because then you can be more efficient until the time box you create there is not enough to do a proper job. But that's up to us to learn to fit that exactly. So these are the options. In many projects, I get them if I asked within a very short time. Yeah, I had some students doing some project for me, and I asked them, "Are you going to be on time?" "Yeah, I hope we will. Besides, we have to because it's our project." And he had some people working for him to do extra work in the weekends. And they were moving deadlines every time when they said, "We're going to do this," and next week they hadn't done it. So within 2 minutes from that guy, I got all 4. Can you recognize them? Now let's see what the other options are. Option 5, adding people. Adding people to a late project makes it later. Yeah, so your project is going too slow. Let's open a can of engineers. Let's open a can of developers. Well, what's the effect there? Some people think that if you have a 12-person project, you can do it with 2 people in 6 months, with 4 people in 3 months, with 6 people in 2 months. Isn't that how projects are calculated? Well, Brooks Law, 1975 said, adding people to a late project makes it later. And actually, adding people to the project may make it later. And Putnam actually measured it. He used 500 projects already run, so they couldn't change the data anymore. 500 projects of similar size and different team size. And he said, the cheapest project is 2 people. The fastest project is 3 to 5 people, but it's only 20% faster. But time is money, so maybe here we have some economic optimum. And well, some managers think if you take 9 mothers, you can make a baby in 1 month. That's why we call this the 9 mothers area. Some things take the time it takes. Yeah, so it's not possible to do it faster. And then the warning, beyond 7 people, the project explodes because you have to pay more people and it takes more time. Now, how do you design a new aircraft, a new airplane? Well, probably your company will get bust. Yeah, only few companies are left in the world. A few are going to fall down soon because they forgot their quality. Yeah, but well, some things take more people, and then we have to learn to work with Brooks Law. You can't ignore it because it will bite you, and you have to learn how to handle it, how to still keep working at a high cost to get things done. The 6th option is the low-hanging fruit. We don't have enough time, but we can save time without negatively affecting the result. If this wouldn't be the case, I wouldn't be talking here. So, what are the elements? Efficiency in what we do, why we do it, for whom we do it, doing the right things, not doing what later proves to be superfluous. Half of what we're going to do is later proves not to have been necessary. If afterwards we see we did something that wasn't necessary, the time is already gone. If before we do it something that is not necessary, we can still decide not to do it. Time saved. Efficiency in how we do it, not taking the first hunch of how to do it, but is there a more efficient solution instead of what we always did, the product, or in the project, spending less time instead of immediately doing everything. Continuous improvement and prevention. So, I'll show that in the next slide. I think the Plan, Do, Check, Act. Efficiency in when we do it, doing it in the right order. Some people like to start with the easy stuff because then it seems that they already have done much. But there is a moment you have to work on the difficult stuff. And once the difficult stuff was done, the easy stuff is still easy, but had to be done differently. So you have to do it over again. Time wasted. So, and then time boxing is more efficient than feature boxing. Feature boxing is waiting until it's done. Time boxing is setting the time. Remember Parkinson's law. And you may have heard about this continuous elimination of waste. Some people call that lean. Yeah, continuous elimination of waste. Not doing the things not necessary. So the secret weapon is Plan, Do, Check, Act. And some people say, well, this is the Deming cycle, Short cycle. Deming called it Plan, Do, Study Act. In Japan, some people call it Kaizen. I don't mind how you call it, as long as we do it. Now, let's see what that means. Doing is not the problem. We do it every day, right? And this is the intuitive cycle that we see people using every day. Pull do. I can't call it plan, because what's the next thing we have to do? We already do it. Next thing we have to do, we already do it. Next thing, we already do it. Intuitively, how we automatically react on the situation based on experience. Now, if intuition would be perfect, everything we do would be perfect. Not everything we do is perfect, right? Therefore, apparently, intuition sometimes points us in the wrong direction. Once we recognize that, how about proper planning what we want to achieve and how we are going to achieve it? The product and the project. Then we do that, we carry out the plan, which is already difficult because we have to follow the plan and the plan must be doable. But assume that was the case. In the check phase, we can check was the result according to plan and the way we achieved it according to plan. If yes, can and should we do it even better? If no, how can we do it better? And then we go to the act phase, and in the act phase, we are going to decide what we're going to do differently in the next cycle. Because if we don't do anything differently, the result will be the same. The only way to constantly improve is doing things differently. But if you try to do everything differently in the next cycle, and then you plan and you do any check, you don't know, even if the result was better, some of the things we did could have been a positive effect, and some of the things we did, not a positive effect. The sum may be positive, but then the negative ones will, well, we won't see them. So if you do one thing at a time, change one thing at a time, and then plan accordingly, do accordingly, check, was it better or not, and do the next act. If you do this very quickly, we can even start randomly and very quickly improve in both the product and in the project. The problem is that most people, well, there is some planning, especially with project managers, I suppose. Yeah, we do, that's not the problem. And in the back of our mind, we know we should have done better, but we are so busy, so we go to the next thing. So the act is what usually is lacking. That's why in the Plan, Do, Check, Act, we focus on the act. What are we going to do differently the next cycle? And we are going to do it differently. Now, in 1950, Deming was asked to teach top management about proper management. MacArthur had cut off the rich top level of all those large companies, and the next level of management compulsory had to learn how to manage. And Deming was one of the people who they also had to listen to. And actually, this picture was somebody wrote down what he heard Deming saying. And you see, there was no Plan, Do, Study, Act. It was not Plan, Do, Check, Act. What he said was, we design, we manufacture, we sell, we investigate the results, what users are doing with it, and we redesign. And you can see that the person writing this down didn't really understand 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But anyway, so, and if you look at Deming's book in the 80s, it's not a cycle. You see this picture, which actually is a kind of cycle. Yeah, we produce, distribute, consumers, research, design, and redesign. Here's your cycle. And if you read the book from Short from the 30s, then you will see that Short said exactly the same, which is understandable because MacArthur had asked Short to teach Japanese management. But Short was ill. So second choice was Deming. Anyway, I don't mind how you call it as long as we do it. And this is really my secret weapon for anything. Some people may think that more quality costs more. Well, rethink. As I said several times, half of what we tend to do in our work later will prove not to have been needed. If we see that after spending the time is already wasted. If we see that before we spend the time, we can still decide not to waste the time. That is one of the secrets how I can very quickly help people to meet a deadline. Because if we save time, we have more time to do the right things right. Yeah. So if we don't do the things that are not needed, we have more time left to do the things that we have to do, and we can even do them better. Therefore, quality costs less. You get more quality for the same. Doing things wrong costs about 3 times as much as doing it right the first time. Yeah. First you do it wrong, then you have to find out, and then if you have to do it right. Yeah. 3 times as expensive as doing it right the first time. Quality costs less because you have a huge budget to help you to learn gradually to do things better and better. Now, we know we are not perfect, and therefore the Plantage Act helps you to continuously improve, as long as you not forget to do this. So what is my toolbox that I bring when people ask me to coach their project or to save their project? The things that Tom Gilp, you may have heard him, is promoting is mostly requirements engineering and quantification of requirements so that we can measure. Yeah. Let's add to that the Plantage Act as the powerful ingredient. Business case, why are we going to do it? Requirements is what are we going to improve and what not. Remember, a project doesn't deliver something function. Well, it delivers some function, but the function actually is only scoping what for the people are we going to improve. Because what we deliver with our project, people are already doing. Marco Polo went to China. It was quite adventurous, but it took a long time. Nowadays, we can go to China in 1 day by plane, very fast, but not as adventurous. So depending on the quality the customer wants, we can do it fast or we can do it adventurous. And so by using planes, we could improve the speed, although the adventure was a little bit less, unless you fly with Boeing, of course. Architecture and design is selecting the optimum compromise for the conflicting requirements. Requirements usually are conflicting. Think about requirements of different stakeholders. Yeah, hopefully they overlap somewhere so that you can still satisfy them both. Yeah. Then we have early review and inspection. Some people call that review. Yeah, review what people do. People make mistakes. If people make something, we know they're injecting defects, and therefore are we waiting until they've done the whole stuff and then try to find the defects, or when we know the person is in the process of injecting defects, making errors, why not do a little piece, quickly review that, plow back what you found so that the person can repair what was in the first 10-20% and then prevent what's in the remainder. So that's what we call early review and inspection, not waiting until all the errors have been injected. What I added to Tom's stuff is the planning part. That's what requirements are project management, but the time is the other part of the project management, quality on time. The weekly task cycle, the bi-weekly delivery cycle, and timeline. And zero defects is an attitude to move towards zero defect. Now, today I'm not going to talk more about zero defects. Some people say that's impossible. I can prove you wrong immediately because accidentally there could be no defects, right? And if you want to see the zero defects video of the presentation I made for BCS last year, you can find it. By the way, if you go to the website myname.eu at conferences, you can even leave out the question mark ID equal, so just Marathon EU conferences, you can go to the BCS with this date. You can download this presentation, and you also can see the video about zero defects. The business case is about why do we do it. The requirements is what, how much, and also it contains the stopping criteria. Are we done? Architecture and design is how we do things. Early review and inspection, check and learn as early as possible. Weekly task cycle is about the efficiency of what we do. The delivery cycle is about the effectiveness of what we do. And timeline is what will happen. And as most projects are late, the moment you make your timeline, you probably will see that it doesn't fit the available time. So the most important part here is, therefore I colored it, what will we do about it if we see we won't fit, it doesn't fit, because failure is not an option. So this is my toolbox of delivering the right result at the right time, even shorter, quality on time. Now, from Tom Gilb, we got language, planning language, which can specify requirements very concisely and clearly, quantifying the goal, which has some elements. This is the simple, Tom makes it usually much more complicated, but this is the basic stuff. You have a description, the speed of luggage handling at the airport, a scale to measure on the time between the arrival of an airplane and the first luggage on belt. And you see what we call the fuzzy brackets, because what's arrival of airplane? Did you ever fly Ryanair? Yeah. The moment it touches the ground, da-da-da-da, again on time, and then it takes another 15 minutes before you're at the gate. So what is arrival of airplane? Better define that better. In this case, we use fuzzy brackets, because later we have, before using this requirement, we have to make more clear what it is. But at this stage, we don't want to spend time on it yet. Yeah? The meter, how do we measure on the scale? Measure arrival of airplane, measure arrival of first luggage on the belt, calculate the difference. Does anybody see a potential issue here with this definition? First luggage on belt, you know what they did? They take one bag, put it in a car, rush it to the belt, put it there, push the button, done, on time, and then half an hour later, the rest comes. So shouldn't be that be measure arrival of last luggage on belt? You see, by writing it down this way, few words, but immediately you can improve on it. Then we have the benchmarks, the playing field, to give the people who have to work on it some feeling about what it is. In 2023, the minimum, it was always more than 2 minutes. Average, we achieved 8 minutes, and the worst last year was 83 minutes. Then current, you see these are keywords. You can use different keywords, but these are useful keywords. What's the current situation? Well, in May 23, there was a competitor who managed to do always within 4 minutes, get all the luggage on the belt. And then it's good to have the source and where to find where the source said it. Yeah, because if we want to know more details, that's where we can find it. Then we have the record. Now, an Olympic record is difficult to surpass, so probably we won't even achieve that. And there is a wild rumor, we don't even know who said it, where it comes from, but there is somebody who said there is a competitor who managed to do it in 57 seconds. Well, and then we have here in the benchmarks also the wish. And the wish is something that is not a requirement for this project, but it's a future improvement that we expect gradually to be able to get. The CEO in his New Year speech, and we can find it in a certain document, he said, once the new system is available in 2026, then I expect that we should be able to achieve less than 2 minutes luggage from the airplane to the belt. And then we have the actual requirements of this project, where we have basically 2 levels, tolerable, some people call that fail. If you don't achieve this level, we failed the project. Yeah. So according to the service level agreement, in Q4, 99% less than 10 minutes. 100% Heathrow Terminal 4, according to service level agreement, never more than 15 minutes. If you show this picture, 99% Q4, you know what the developers usually say? Which year? So maybe better mention the year. And maybe better mention which terminal, because different terminals may have different distances. Then the goal, that is what we think we can achieve with the time and money budget of this project. And then according to marketing, they said in Q2, 15 minutes, but not worse than 15 minutes. Q3, not worse than 10. In Q4, not worse than 5. Can you imagine that if you show this to your CEO, he can immediately understand what you're talking about? And you don't have to be afraid that these numbers are incorrect. If you ask for numbers, you don't get numbers. But if you show wrong numbers, they will tell you. And now we're discussing. So you write it down, put some numbers that you think are not too bad. Yeah, and then your customer or your CEO or whoever will tell you whether it's right or wrong. Now I was working in some other project, and they said, Niels, the requirements should be smart. I had heard about this, but I didn't know the exact details of that. So when I was at home, I switched on my computer and Google, what is smart requirements? Well, of course, these are smart. Yeah, they're specific, they're measurable, attainable, possible at all, and realizable. And on time or traceable. Some people use for smart the T, traceable or time. Of course they are. So Tom Gilbs used this quote, and I like that. Because some people have trouble with always quantifying things. Like what's the user friendliness? Well, user friendliness, 3 or 7. Well, the moment you can't give it a number, we say you have to decompose until you can. And that's what's meant with this quote. He says, the fact that we can set numeric objectives and track them is powerful. But it's not the main point. The main point of quantification is to force us to think deeply and debate exactly what we are talking about. So that others and ourselves later cannot fail to understand. Can you imagine that this supports that? Quantification and the fact that you urge yourself to do the quantification make you think, what are we actually talking about? Now, that's that language I learned from Tom. Organizing the quality, what, why, for whom, how much. And we have a specification like high security, quantification, detection, whatever that means, 99.9% of any hacker we should catch within 10 minutes or so, or within 10 seconds. Yeah. Then we have a suggested solution, and we can say, okay, this solution brings us from this level the current level 90%, maybe to 95% detection. Means 5% is still slipping through. Then we implement that solution, we measure what did we actually get. The actual impact was 91%, which means we still have to have a next solution to see how we can move towards that 95% or maybe 99.9%. And at some time we may be done. So that's the principle of that quantification. And suddenly I realized, I saw this picture from Tom at some presentation, and I said, actually, that's what I do with my planning. So how do we get on time? Organizing the how and the when. Based on the selected solution, what we are supposed to achieve, we are planning how to achieve that. So what to achieve and what to do to achieve that, and what not to do, because it's not necessary. Then we estimate how much can we do in the coming week. We learn from the actual time spent, and that's our quantification loop. So therefore I have what I call the weekly task cycle. Remember, I have 3 elements: the task cycle, the delivery cycle, and timeline. So the weekly task cycle, quantifying the way to get there. How much time do we have available the coming week? 2/3 of the available time is the net plannable time. If you plan 100% of your time, you will fail every week. Because I'm sure you do go to the loo, you do drink coffee or tea, you do talk with people, you get some email, you have to do some planning, you have to help each other. Those things happen. They happen every time. You don't know exactly what's happening and when it's happening, but you know it's happening. And I'm sure you have had weeks that you had a plan, and at the end of the week, the plan was still the same. Nothing was done because you had 100% of interrupts. Now, to be able to continue with our work, we say, let's give all those little interrupts that happen anyway 1/3 of the available time. So that 2/3 of the available time is the net plannable time available for what we have to achieve. So a time box for the things that happen anyway to be realistic. They happen anyway, so we don't even have to put them in a plan. But we have a limit. Then we think, what are the most important things to do to feed what we have to achieve? We estimate the effort needed to do these things, like this. These tasks are tasks that people are giving themselves. It's not the manager giving tasks. No, the people themselves define based on what should be achieved. They define what they are going to do to feed successfully towards achieving that. They define things they have to do, and then based on that, and they estimate the time necessary. And they add them up. If they work 40 hours, 2/3 is 26, 27 hours. So let's default start with 26 hours of plannable time. Which most important things fit in the net plannable time? Which means that is what we can do and going to do. And what are we not going to do? Yeah, but this has to be done. This is important. I know, but we already know 1 week earlier that it won't be done by the end of the week. Yeah, but this is more important. This is more important than that. Okay, then you swap. No problem. It's your plan. It's your success. You are doing this only for yourself. And all these numbers are only for yourself to have a chance to be successful. That's all. And then we write this down. If you have your plan in your mind, in your fuzzy mind, that's not enough. You think you know exactly what you're going to do in your mind? Well, if it's so clear in your mind, can you write it down? And when people start writing it down, they write something down, they add something, they change something. I thought it was completely clear in your mind. Well, the fuzzy mind is useful to get new ideas. The errors in our thinking create new ideas. But for planning, that's not so good. So we write it down. And we write down the hours you give yourself to successfully do this task, add them up, and at 26, that's the end. Or if you have to go one day to the dentist, to the doctor, to a course, 2/3 of the gross available time is net plannable time, you plan that. And 2/3 turns out to be quite good for project development projects. So what we are trying to do here to make the best use of the limited available time. After the work, the time is already spent. Before the work, we still can decide what's really important, what's less important, what we must do, what we can do, what we are going to do, what we are not going to do. Therefore, we plan first instead of finding out later. We can't change history, but we can improve a little bit the future. So how is it connecting with deliveries? Delivery is something that that's the result. What should we achieve? Tasks is work that we have to do to feed achieving that. And we deliver things to stakeholders to see whether what we think they meant was actually what they meant. Yeah, often you hear exactly what I said, but not what I meant. Okay, it's good that we find out now and not at the end of the project. Yeah. So this week we may work on this, but some deliveries may take a little bit longer than 1 or 2 weeks, depending on how long you want to postpone your delivery. Some things take longer. Okay, but there is a risk there. Normally you get feedback from your delivery, and if there are tasks that are affected by what you learn here are not yet done, you still can change the tasks. But if in the delivery you find out that something you already did here in this week for this one, that it was wrong, then you have to do things over. So that's a risk for wasting time. An example. There was the project in Eindhoven, and they're designing the new parking system. And there was a team in Antwerp who had to provide some elements for the bi-weekly delivery to stakeholders. And the Antwerp team usually was late and not delivering what was expected. So they sent me, you go to Antwerp and take them. Okay, so I like these lines with tuck, 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 tuck. In this case, there were days. Eindhoven was delivering to stakeholders every Friday, every 2 weeks. And so we thought, well, how about Antwerp delivering to Eindhoven at the end of Tuesday, so that there were 2 days for them to ease out any issues by integrating it into the delivery to the stakeholders. Now, accidentally, I was there on the Wednesday. You know, I can talk a lot. So it wasn't 40 hours left, 36 hours gross left. 2/3, 24 hours plannable. Sergio was the project lead of this very small team. And he was also doing actual work, not just managing, but also doing work. He made his plan already. But then I said, shouldn't you do some management by walking around, just to make sure that your colleague is running correctly and everything is going smoothly? Oh yeah, how much time do you think you need for that for the coming week? You're thinking, okay, 3 hours. Okay, 3. And then he already had planning for the next week 3 as a project lead. So, but he added up, these were the actual numbers he had there. And it was 24 hours. For some weird reason, these numbers are usually coming to the right numbers. But then Gregory came in and he already knew the drill. So he came with his list. He said, these are the things that have to be done to deliver to the main team. Otherwise, they can't deliver to the stakeholders. And that's 42 hours. So we already know we're going to fail. Failure is not an option. What are we going to do about it? So I asked Gregory, what's that draft design and that finished design? He said, yeah, that's next time I have to do something for Eindhoven and they still have to tell me what it is. I don't know. I said, well, if you don't have to deliver in this delivery cycle, you don't even know what it is. How do you know it's 6 hours? Yeah, usually it's about 6 hours. I said, yeah, but how do you know? So what's the point in having it in your plan now if you don't even know what it is? So moved out for later. But 30 hours, still no success. So still work to do. But he said, Niels, this XML at the bottom, this XML, I worked last week on it and I just started working with it. It takes a little bit more time. So I asked Jerome, could you help me? So we asked Jerome in, and Jerome said, yes, I studied that and I think I can do both elements in 3 hours each. We couldn't make zeros at Gregory's plan because still he had to talk with Jerome and get back the result and integrate it in his delivery. But again, there we were at 24. Now was a chance that they would be successful. So that was this Wednesday. The Friday here, I was in Eindhoven, seeing how the delivery to stakeholders went. Actually, Serge was also there. And Serge had a big smile because they delivered and it simply worked. Can you imagine what would have happened if he wouldn't have designed this delivery? So we don't only design the product, we also design the project to be successful. Every time again, we design also the project to be successful. Every week we reflect and reflect. Yeah, so every week we do this planning, but before we make the new plan, we think what actually happened in the previous week. Yeah, if some task was not completed, was the time spent, but the work not done? Apparently it took longer. And we can think, what did we think before we did it? What do we now know once we did it? What's the difference? And can we learn to do the estimate better the next time? If the time wasn't even spent and therefore something wasn't done. Distraction, time spent on other things, spent or whatever. So we learn from this. And what we do here is we immediately consume these metrics. So we had numbers of estimates, we have actual numbers, and if there's a significant difference, we learn from that. I was at a project in the US, and a year later I came back and the QA person said, Niels, I have a database full of numbers. All the estimates of the whole team and all the actuals. Do you want to see it? I said, Doug, I'm sorry, I don't want to see it. I'm not interested in those numbers. Because at the end of the week, we consume them for learning and improvement, which means they lose their meaning after that. Immediate consumption of the metrics for immediate improvement. Then we close any unfinished task after having dealt with the consequence. If there is some tail of some task, we put it on the candidate activities list because maybe the other things on that list are more important than the tail of this task. And then we continue with planning the task for the next week. And this is what we do every week. Example. John was a designer, front-end designer. And he came in with this list Of course, I couldn't tell what he actually was doing, but these were the tasks he defined for himself. These were the numbers, 26 hours available, 26 hours planned. So let's see what happened. A week later, he came in and this was the result. This, okay. This, wow, was apparently much more complicated than he thought. So what did he think a week ago? What does he know now? What can he learn from that to estimate better the next time? Yeah. These 3 and 2, well, is that significant? It's up to the person to decide whether it's significant enough to waste to spend time on the learning. Yeah, 6 or 7, also good, and it was done. But anyway, not everything was done. So that's the analysis we did, the reflection. Then we do the preflection, learning. So this was his new list. 26 available, 40 hours. Again, exactly the numbers he showed that day. And I said, well, it seems we have a problem. Because at the end of the week, it won't be done. Yeah, but it must be done. There are 2 teams waiting for these things I have to do. And if I don't deliver, they get stuck. I said, oh, interesting. So how about inviting the team leads of these teams? Yeah. So the team lead of from team X came in and we asked her, is all these 4 things, do you need them next week? She said, well, 2 I need and the others can be postponed. We asked the team lead of the next team and he came in and he said, well, I need these next week and the others can wait a week. And again, I don't know how possible, but again, the numbers were right, 26. Now there was a chance that he could be successful. That's what I as a coach do the first few weeks, but the principle is very simple. So quickly they can do it among themselves to help each other more to do the right things, more to be successful. So weekly, we do this 3-step procedure. Individually, people prepare the list. I showed people came in already with their prepared list. They finish the tasks of their week. They think what to do and to achieve next, what to do for that, how much time they have available, an estimate. Then they come in a meeting, first with me, but soon with some colleague to help each other. They learn from what happened. They check about the priorities, check what is possible, and have a new plan. And then we have the team meeting where we have the socializing and the synergy. Formal confirmation, concurrency, learning, helping, socializing. And there we show the list. There's a reason to have maybe Excel. This was not, you could use Excel. This was Access. Nowadays I have a web-based simple thing where people can say, Albert was planning this. And in the team meeting, he says, I'm going to do this. Okay, next. Louis, I'm going to do this. Peter Paul, I'm going to do this because I'm on travel. I have only 1 day. Peter, only 1 day. This is what I'm going to do. And what happens here is what I call the synergy effect. So if people say, I'm going to do this, somebody says, how can you do that? Because you need something and that's not yet ready. Oh yeah. Okay, replan. Or you can, for that, you need me. We have to do that together. And it's not in my plan. If it's not in my plan, I don't have the time. So, replan. So what we do here is modulating the plan. Individually, people generate their plan. Then here we modulate the individual plan. And here we modulate the group plan. Because modulating costs less than generation. Thinking what to do, make the list, takes some time. And then tuning it, modulating, I call that, takes less time. So to make very efficient planning, we do with as few people as possible what we can do with as few people as possible. 1, 2, team. Doesn't its planning take a lot of time? Well, that's what some people say. Well, we measured it. 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. Is that much time? Imagine the time they can save by doing this. Yeah, so why is it important? Task cycle planning is not just planning, it exposes issues that we can immediately solve before wasting time. Half of what people do later proves not to have been necessary. Therefore, if we see it before people do it, we still can decide not to do it. During the planning, we can efficiently see what our colleagues think they're going to do. In the team meeting, everybody knows exactly what the others are going to do, whether they have to work together, whether they have to help each other, whatever. Yeah, whether they're doing the right things, they can still comment on that. So by tuning this in the past, well, I started doing this in 2000. Yeah, in the past 25 years, we have honed this whole process to make it very efficient, not to waste any unnecessary time. So then we have the timeline. The timeline is results to task and back. So if we have let's call it a total project. Let's assume we have some idea what to do. Of course, during the project, our thinking may change, but to the best of our knowledge, this is what we think we have to do. Now, if that takes more than, let's say, 8 or 10 weeks, we put a horizon at 8 or 10 weeks. Why do we put that horizon? Because beyond the horizon, the further it is away, the more the details will change anyway. So if we plan too much detail so far away, we will probably wasting our time, because once we get there, we will have better insight. Okay, now we can focus on this period of time where if we have 2-week delivery cycles, we have 4 or 5 delivery cycles. Why don't we focus on just one delivery cycle? Well, when I started doing that with the team felt uneasy, because are we really doing the things in the right order? Yeah. So in order to optimize the order of doing things, we said, let's take 4 or 5 delivery cycles, yeah, and so that we can optimize the order of doing things. And then we focus on the new horizon, that's the end of the first delivery, which if we have a 2-week delivery, we have 2 task cycles, which is quite nice because halfway we can say, are we going to achieve what we want to achieve by this delivery? If not, what can we do about it? Then we say, okay, if this is what we have to achieve, these are the tasks we have to do to achieve the first week. And then once we make the task list, we think, okay, what will we have done by the end of the week? And we calibrate, because if what we have to do only fulfills half of what we should do that week, we already can say that the project will take twice as long. Can you extrapolate that? Well, do you have better numbers? And 1 week later, we actually have done it. So we can calibrate again. And a week later, we can calibrate again. So what we do is from the top to the bottom, we move from what we should achieve to what we should achieve in 8 to 10 weeks, to achieve in 2 weeks, to achieve in 1 week, and what to do to achieve that. And we calibrate top down, bottom up, top down, bottom up. One example of the parking system. Normally, people ask me 5 or 10 weeks, 1 day a week to coach them, and then they can do it themselves. But in this case, they asked me just to be the QA manager, to come in any day with asked or not asked. I could come in any day and say whatever I thought I should tell them. So, but they made this timeline roughly already, and guess what? They already had some 10 weeks, about 10 weeks periods. Yeah. An architect had already done a lot of architectural work. Actually, the architects wanted to have another month to do better architecture. They said, no, this is a good basis. Let's just start and find out what the actual architecture should be. Then the problem was that they needed an exhibition thing. There is Intertraffic. That's a very big exhibition of traffic, parking systems, and other road signaling, whatever things. And if you are not there, the next one is 2 years later. So if you're not there, you lose a lot of sales because the next exhibition is 2 years later. So you better have a working system there. Now, in their original estimates, they thought they could easily fit. They knew exactly, they already made parking systems, they only wanted to make a clean new one, they had a good architecture, so they made a list of things to do, added the days there, added them up, and they said, well, this fits. So they started working. But then, after a few weeks, I looked at their results. So we are doing quite good measurements. And it turned out that everything took about twice as long as they originally estimated. That's not bad estimation, but it indicated that they forgot elements to include in their estimates, like project management, like, well, whatever, me being there, yeah, whatever. So it was twice as much. And I said, well, guys, it's going to be twice as much. Now it will be tricky to be on time for your Intertraffic exhibition. Yeah, but this is the first month. We have to learn, and next month everything will go better. Well, you know what happened? The next months were other reasons why it took even longer than twice. So I went to the R&D manager, went in his room, closed the door. I said, Wim, I'm not really leaving this room until we have solved this. So he opened his computer with the planning there was a good project manager there. And once he saw that they are spending much more time than originally estimated, which meant that they wouldn't have done everything for the exhibition, then he called in the project manager and the architect. He said, guys, you are not leaving this room until we have solved this. If everything fits easily, you don't have to prioritize. But now we have to prioritize to make sure that what we deliver is good enough for people wanting to buy our system. Well, I can tell you what happened. They listened to that, they prioritized, and they had a very successful exhibition.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but we usually try and finish about 8 o'clock. Yeah, do you have much more to do?
I'm almost done.
Lovely. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Quality on time. So what's missing? I was discussing this at another webinar, and somebody suddenly said, Niels, you know, when I listen to this, I suddenly realize what's missing in general project management education. And I don't know whether you agree, but he said, execution. In project management, we learn how to plan, how to follow, but do you really know how to do the operation to execution? And I think that's what I added to the whole stuff. So this is my toolbox. And now you don't have an excuse anymore. Deliver a quality on time isn't really difficult. I showed some examples, so no excuse anymore. If you're not sure, you can ask me, and I could coach you or your team. From now on, just deliver the right result at the right time. No complaining or excuses. And if I hear excuses because they caused you to delay, I have my bullshit stamp. Because it's our responsibility. We took the responsibility. We will deliver on time, and usually that's not really difficult. If there is any problem, the mantra is there. What are we going to do about it. There are booklets you can download from my website. And that's what I wanted to talk about.
Thank you,
Thank
Niels.
you.
Do we have a few minutes for questions? Couple of
Sure.
questions. Anyone from the floor here wants to ask Niels a question? Stunned silence.
It was either clear or not clear or.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So
Somebody says brilliant, thank you.
with some of the tasks, I think at certain points, when you were delivering the task, I can't remember which example it was, but I think it was the 26 hours, when you were going through the different tasks, and you added 26 hours, you took out some of the tasks. What happens to those tasks? Are they just not completed? Are they forgotten about? Or
What
So
are
if
you
you see
talking
some of
about
the-
this one?
yeah, so like all the other tasks, are they just completely eliminated? What happens to those tasks?
Well, first, we just see reality. We are not talking about theory. We are not talking about what we hope we do. We estimate to the best of our knowledge. Estimation is always to the best of our knowledge. Some people complain that estimation is not precise. Of course it's not. That is not accurate. Of course it's not. But the interesting thing is, if you have, as long as the estimates are on average okay, the sum is quite precise. That's a mathematical trick. And if things are not done, well, they have to be replanned. Yeah, you can't change history. All we can do is to optimize what we still have to do. And if there are things that should have been done and weren't done, well, maybe they appear in the next list, but maybe in this week, other things are more important. One of the other mantras is we only work on the most important things. And importance can change every week. But was that a little bit about your question or not?
Perfect, thank you.
Anyone online want to ask a question?
Quality gates. Quality gates, if there are to be available. Yeah, that was interesting. I was working with a project where they were buying trains. And they were using the system engineering process with the stringent gains of well, what is the name? And they had reviews with the supplier. So the whole circus went to Paris to discuss the review, what they understood from the requirements and what they still didn't understand from the requirements. I said, if there's something they didn't understand at this stage, we waste time. And if we are not on time with this project, with these trains running and transporting passengers, then there will be another name on the building. So we can't allow at the review to have, at the quality gate review, to have something not understood. So why not in between these reviews, go to the supplier or go to your customer, whatever, yeah, and discuss these things so that actually the review is only check, 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 check. You even can do it by email. Yeah, but then we don't have to go to Paris. Well, that's your problem. So that's about gates.
Also about at what juncture would you suggest the quality gate should be available? And would there be an independent group overlooking this?
Well, if you have a question, I can bounce the question. Should we? Is there a need? Should we? Is there a reason?
Well, we always had quality at certain junctures, like after requirements, specification, even after development, there has to be quality gates somewhere and has to be an independent party looking at it. And
Well, yes.
before and after testing.
Yeah, so if there is a reason to have independent quality observers or whatever, sometimes that is required by law. That's okay. But well, I never use the word agile, apart from defining agility as being quickly and appropriately responding to circumstances. So if that is the case, we organize it. And if that's the case, we organize it that we have stuff ready when they are coming in to do the checking, so that things don't delay. So we design not only the product, we design the project. And as independent checkers are involved, we involve them in our planning. That will always be my answer. Plan to check act. What do we have to achieve? How do we achieve it? And the moment you bounce back that question to the people, okay, if this is what we have to do, how can we achieve it? Usually clever people already have an answer. Doesn't have to be the best answer, but it's a good start to find out how to efficiently solve the problem. So that's why actually I never see problems in projects, because what are we going to do about it? And then people know. The thing is, if you don't ask that question, things keep lingering on, and then we easily go over time.
Okay, thank you very much, Niels. I think we'll have to wind up there.
Oh, you want to go to the coffee and the gin?
We do networking event.
But it's okay.
We,
It's okay. People can download from our website. People later can probably see the video from this. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions left. I like to discuss real cases, not too much theory, but I like real cases. So if you have a real problem, I like to discuss with you.
So Niels has given us his website address, and hopefully there will be a recording. There's a recording on Niels' website anyway, I think. There should be a recording of this. Please do fill in the review form when you get the link to it. And in particular, tell us if you've got any ideas for future events. So thank you very much, Niels. Let's all give Niels a round of applause.